Jaisalmer. The name itself sounded like a sigh of the desert wind. It was a city made of golden sandstone, rising from the Thar desert like a magnificent sandcastle. Its walls, ancient and strong, had watched centuries drift by like grains of sand. Within these walls, narrow alleyways twisted and turned. They were like secret passages leading to unexpected courtyards and hidden temples. The stones beneath one's feet were worn smooth by countless footsteps, each step a silent story. Sunlight, when it found its way into these lanes, painted everything in hues of amber and gold, making the city glow from within. The air in Jaisalmer was thick with the scent of history. You could smell the dryness of the desert, of course, but mixed with it were other smells. The fragrance of spices from bustling market stalls, the sweet perfume of desert flowers that bloomed stubbornly in hidden corners. Sometimes a faint scent of old parchment and ink would drift from a tiny shop. Sounds echoed in these alleys too. The distant call of a peacock, the laughter of children playing hopscotch, the murmur of conversations in Mawari, and the gentle chime of temple bells. It was a city that whispered its secrets to those who knew how to listen. Life here moved at a slower pace, dictated by the sun and the seasons. Mornings were cool and fresh, before the desert heat truly awoke. People emerged from their homes, their faces calm, ready to greet the day. The shadows were long then, stretching across the cobblestones. As the sun climbed higher, the city would bake, and the lanes would grow quiet, people seeking shelter in the cool interiors of their homes or shops. Then, as evening approached, a gentle breeze would stir, carrying with it the promise of a cooler night under a sky full of stars. Evenings were a magical time in Jaisalmer. The setting sun would set the fort ablaze with colour, turning the golden stone to fiery orange, then soft pink and finally a deep purple. The ramparts stood silhouetted against the vast expanse of the desert sky. From these high points one could see the desert stretching out in all directions, an endless sea of sand dunes. It was a view that made you feel small, yet connected to something ancient and vast. The city seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the stars to appear, each one a tiny diamond scattered across dark velvet. In one of these quiet, winding alleyways there was a small shop. Its wooden door was often open, inviting the curious gaze of passers-by. Inside, the light was dim and the air smelled of paper, ink and something else, a faint, almost imperceptible scent of old stories. This was the shop of Elias, a young calligrapher. He was not like other young men of his age. While they sought adventure in the bustling markets or dreamt of distant lands, Elias found his world in the graceful curves and sharp lines of written words. He loved the feel of the reed pen in his hand, the way the ink flowed onto the paper, giving life to thoughts and emotions. Elias had a special gift, though he rarely spoke of it. When he touched a piece of writing, especially an old one, he could feel things. He could sense the joy, the sorrow, the hope, or the fear of the person who had written the words long ago. It was as if the ink held not just meaning, but also the very soul of its creator. This made his work more than just a craft. It was a communion. He didn't just copy text, he felt them, understood them, and then, with utmost care, he would recreate them, trying to preserve the original spirit within his own beautiful script. His small shop was filled with scrolls and parchments. Some were new, commissions from merchants who needed ledgers written, or from families wanting wedding invitations inscribed in elegant letters. Others were old, brought to him for repair or copying ancient poems, philosophical texts, or forgotten family histories. Elias treated each one with reverence. He would spend hours studying the script, the texture of the paper, the fading of the ink. He believed that every untold story, every forgotten word held a kind of magic, a piece of the past waiting to be rediscovered and shared. His passion was not for fame or fortune, but for these quiet connections across time. People in the alley knew Elias as a quiet, gentle soul. They saw him bent over his low wooden desk, his brow furrowed in concentration, his hand moving with a steady, practiced grace. Sometimes children would peek into his shop, watching him work in silent fascination. He would smile at them, a shy, warm smile that reached his kind eyes. He found solace in his work, a deep sense of purpose. The bustling city outside, with its noises and demands, seemed to fade away when he was lost in the world of letters, listening to the silent whispers of the ink. One afternoon, when the sun was at its fiercest and the alley was quiet, a shadow fell across the doorway of Elias's shop. He looked up from his work, his eyes adjusting to the sudden change in light. Standing there was an old woman. She was very old, her face a roadmap of wrinkles, each line telling a story of sun and wind, of joys and sorrows. Her eyes, though, were surprisingly bright, like dark, polished stones that had seen much of the world. She was draped in a simple, faded sari, the colour of the desert dust, and she leaned heavily on a sturdy wooden staff. The old woman said nothing at first. She just stood there, her gaze fixed on Elias. There was an air of mystery about her, a sense of stillness that seemed to command the very air around her. Elias felt a strange sensation, a prickling on his skin, as if an ancient presence had entered his small space. He had never seen her before in the alley, and Jaisalmer was a city where familiar faces were the norm. She did not look like a tourist, nor did she seem like a local he had somehow overlooked. She carried herself with a quiet dignity that was both humbling and a little unnerving. Elias put down his pen. He rose slowly, a polite greeting forming on his lips. "Welcome," he said softly. "How may I help you?" His voice was gentle, accustomed to the quiet of his shop. The old woman did not reply immediately. She took a slow step inside, her staff making a soft thud on the stone floor. Her eyes scanned the interior of the shop, lingering for a moment on the scrolls and parchments that lined the shelves. It felt as if she was not just looking at them, but through them, perhaps sensing the stories they held, much like Elias himself did. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was low and raspy, like the rustle of dry leaves. "They say you understand the language of old things," she said, her bright eyes still fixed on him. It was not a question, but a statement. Elias felt a shiver run down his spine. How did she know about his secret, his ability to feel the stories in the ink? He had never spoken of it openly. He simply nodded, a sense of anticipation and a little apprehension coiling within him. He knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, that this was no ordinary visit. The old woman then reached into the folds of her sari. With slow, deliberate movements, she brought out a small wooden box. It was not large, perhaps the size of a loaf of bread, but it seemed to carry an immense weight of age and mystery. She held it out to Elias with both hands. The wood was dark, almost black, and worn smooth by time and touch. It was intricately carved, but the carvings were so ancient, so weathered, that the patterns were difficult to decipher. They looked like swirling desert winds, or perhaps the scales of some mythical creature. There was no visible lock, no hinges, no apparent way to open it. Elias took the box carefully. It felt surprisingly heavy in his hands and cool to the touch despite the heat of the day. As his fingers brushed against the ancient wood, a jolt, like a faint whisper of static electricity, passed through him. He could feel a faint thrumming sensation emanating from within the box, a silent, ancient heartbeat. It was filled with an energy he had never encountered before, something powerful, deeply hidden, and incredibly old. He looked up at the old woman, his eyes wide with unspoken questions, but her face remained impassive, her bright eyes watching him intently. "This box holds a story," the old woman said, her voice barely above a whisper. "A story that has been waiting a long time to be told. It has chosen you." Elias looked down at the box again, then back at her. Chosen him? How could a box choose someone? Yet as he held it, he felt a strange pull, a connection to this mysterious object. It was as if the box itself was alive, aware of his presence and perhaps of his unique ability. He ran his fingers over the smooth, carved surface, trying to understand its secrets through touch. "What story does it hold?" Elias asked, his voice hushed with awe. The old woman shook her head slowly. "That is for the box to tell you and for you to discover," she replied. "Not all locks are opened with keys. Some require a different kind of understanding." With those enigmatic words, she gave a slight nod, turned, and as silently as she had arrived, she walked out of the shop. Elias watched her go, a sense of bewilderment and profound curiosity washing over him. He was left alone with the ancient wooden box, its silent promise of a hidden tale resting heavily in his hands. As soon as the old woman disappeared from sight, Elias turned his full attention to the mysterious wooden box. He placed it carefully on his low work table, the dark wood stark against the lighter surface. He examined it from every angle, his calligrapher's eye searching for any clue, any hint of a mechanism or a hidden clasp. The carvings were indeed beautiful, intricate and deeply worn. They seemed to shift and change as he looked at them like patterns in wind-blown sand. But for all its beauty, the box offered no obvious way to be opened. It was a perfect, seamless object. He tried gently prying at the edges where a lid might be, but the wood was solid, unyielding. He pressed on various parts of the carvings, hoping one might be a hidden button or a trigger. Nothing happened. The box remained stubbornly closed, guarding its secrets tightly. Elias, usually a patient man, felt a flicker of frustration. He was used to the gentle persuasion of ink on paper, not the silent resistance of ancient wood. He brought out some of his finer tools, delicate probes and small levers he sometimes used for repairing old book bindings. He handled them with care, not wanting to damage the box. He probed gently along what seemed to be the faintest of lines, a possible seam, but the wood did not give. It was as if the box was carved from a single solid block. The faint thrumming sensation he had felt earlier was still there, a subtle vibration against his fingertips. It was a reminder that this was no ordinary container. It pulsed with a life of its own, almost as if it was aware of his attempts and was deliberately resisting him. He sighed, leaning back. The sun was beginning to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows into his shop. The more he tried to force it, the more inscrutable the box became. It was like trying to grasp smoke. He realized that his usual methods, his logic and his tools were not going to work here. The old woman's words echoed in his mind. Not all locks are opened with keys. Some require a different kind of understanding. What kind of understanding did this box require? He felt a growing certainty that the answer lay not in force, but in something else. Something connected to the very essence of the box, and perhaps to the desert from which it seemed to have sprung. Section 6. Whispers on the Desert Wind. As dusk began to settle over Yzalma, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Elias made a decision. He carefully wrapped the wooden box in a soft cloth and left his small shop. The alleyways were cooler now, and a gentle breeze had started to blow, carrying the scent of the cooling sand. He walked through the winding lanes, past homes where lamps were being lit, their warm glow spilling onto the streets. He walked towards the ancient city walls, and then beyond them out into the vast, silent expanse of the Thar Desert. The city lights receded behind him, and the sounds of urban life faded. He found a quiet spot on a low sand dune, the sand still warm from the day's sun. The silence here was profound, broken only by the soft sigh of the wind as it swept across the dunes, creating ever-changing patterns. The sky above was immense, a canvas of deepening blue where the first stars were beginning to prick through. Elias sat down, unwrapped the box and placed it on the sand before him. In the soft twilight, the carvings on the box seemed to glow faintly, taking on a new ethereal quality. The thrumming sensation from within it felt stronger here, more resonant, as if it was responding to the ancient pulse of the desert. He didn't try to open the box this time. He just sat there watching it, feeling its presence. He thought about the old woman, her wise eyes and her cryptic words. He thought about the stories he usually worked with, stories written by human hands on paper or parchment. This box, however, felt different. It felt as if it held a story born from the desert itself, a tale as old as the sands and the stars. He closed his eyes and listened to the wind. It whispered secrets as it passed, carrying tales from distant lands, tales of ancient kings and forgotten pathways. The air grew cooler. The desert night was descending, bringing with it a sense of peace and timelessness. Elias felt a calmness settle over him, a feeling of connection to the vast landscape around him. He reached out and gently placed his hands on the box. He didn't try to force it, didn't try to find a lock. Instead, he focused his mind, trying to listen, to understand, just as he did with the old scripts in his shop. He tried to feel the essence of the box, to connect with the story he believed was held within its dark, unyielding shell. As Elias sat there, lost in thought, his hands resting gently on the ancient wooden box, something began to happen. It was not sudden, nor was it dramatic. At first he felt a subtle shift in the thrumming sensation from within the box. It seemed to grow stronger, warmer, and then it began to resonate with the rhythm of his own breathing, his own quiet heartbeat. The wind around him seemed to die down, and an expectant hush fell over the desert. The stars above blazed with an intense clarity, their light casting a silver sheen on the sand dunes. A faint, almost invisible line of light appeared along the top edge of the box. It was not a crack forced open, but rather a gentle parting, as if the wood itself was sighing open. The light grew brighter, not a harsh glare, but a soft, warm luminescence, the color of a desert sunrise. It pulsed gently, and with it came a faint, sweet fragrance like that of a rare desert flower blooming in the dead of night. Elias watched, breathless, his heart pounding in his chest. He had done nothing to force it. The box was opening on its own, responding to something he could not name. Perhaps the stillness of the desert night, or his own quiet patience, or the unspoken understanding that had passed between him and this ancient artifact. Slowly, gracefully, the lid of the box rose. There was no sound of creaking hinges or groaning wood. It opened as smoothly and silently as a flower unfurling its petals. The light from within spilled out, illuminating Elias's face with its gentle glow. It was not treasure in the conventional sense that lay within, no gold, no jewels. Instead, nestled on a bed of what looked like dried desert moss were several delicate scrolls. They were made of a material he had never seen before, thin and papery, the color of pale sand, yet strangely resilient. Elias felt a profound sense of awe. This was not an act of force, but an act of acceptance, of revelation. The box had chosen its moment, its place, and perhaps its reader. The old woman's words came back to him. It has chosen you. He understood now that the box was not merely an object, but a guardian of something precious. The desert itself seemed to hold its breath, and the stars watched down as the secrets of the enigmatic desert rose. The story held within the box began to unveil themselves to the young calligrapher under the vast, silent sky. Section 8. Scrolls of Sand and Time. With hands that trembled slightly, Elias reached into the illuminated interior of the box. He carefully lifted out one of the scrolls. It was incredibly light, and the material felt strange beneath his fingertips. Smoother than paper, yet with a texture like fine pressed sand. As he unrolled it, he saw that it was covered in a script unlike any he had ever encountered. The characters were not letters or symbols he recognized from any known language. They were more like intricate patterns, flowing and swirling like desert winds, or like the delicate veins on a leaf, or the constellations in the night sky. Yet, as Elias gazed at these strange, beautiful markings, he found that he could understand them. It was not a reading in the usual sense, not a deciphering of words. Instead, as his eyes traced the flowing lines, images, emotions, and sensations flooded his mind. It was his special gift, his ability to feel the stories in ink, now working in a way he had never imagined. He saw vast stretches of desert, not as it was now, but as it had been in a time long past. He saw people, their faces unfamiliar, their clothes ancient, living in harmony with the harsh but beautiful land. He felt their joys, their sorrows, their struggles, and their deep connection to the earth. The scroll told a story of the desert itself, of its creation, its moods, its hidden oases, and its sacred places. It spoke of the wind as a storyteller, of the sand as a keeper of memories. It described the delicate balance of life in such an unforgiving environment, the resilience of creatures and plants, and the wisdom of those who knew how to listen to the desert's subtle voice. It was a story not of grand battles or mighty kings, but of the quiet, enduring spirit of life, of time flowing like a river of sand, and of the interconnectedness of all things. The calligraphy, if it could be called that, pulsed with a gentle light, each character seemingly alive. Elias unrolled another scroll and then another. Each one revealed a different facet of this ancient tale, weaving together a rich tapestry of history, myth, and profound wisdom. He learned of a time when the desert was a garden, of a star that fell to earth, and of a people who could speak to the stones and the wind. It was a story far older than Yaisalmer itself, a story that seemed to be the very soul of the desert. He was no longer just Elias, the calligrapher from a small shop. He was a witness to the dawn of time, a listener to the earth's oldest secrets held within these scrolls of sand and time. Section 9. A New Script for Life. As the first hint of dawn touched the eastern horizon, painting the sky with soft hues of pink and grey, Elias carefully rolled up the last scroll and placed it back in the wooden box. The light from within the box faded, and the lid closed silently, as if its purpose for now was fulfilled. Elias sat there for a long time, the cool morning breeze washing over him, his mind reeling with the immensity of what he had experienced. The desert around him seemed different now, no longer just sand and stone, but a place alive with ancient stories, vibrant with hidden meanings. The encounter with the box and its contents had changed him profoundly. His understanding of calligraphy, which had always been his passion, was now transformed. Before, he had seen it as the art of beautiful writing, of preserving human thoughts and stories. Now, he understood that calligraphy could be much more. It could be a way to connect with the very essence of life, with the spirit of a place, with the ancient wisdom of the earth itself. The script on the scrolls was not just a form of writing, it was a reflection of the natural world, a language that spoke directly to the soul. When Elias returned to his small shop in Jaisalmer, the city was just beginning to wake. The familiar sounds and smells of the alley greeted him, but he saw them with new eyes. He felt a deeper connection to his home, to the golden stones of the fort, to the desert that surrounded it. His own calligraphy began to change. His lines became more fluid, more organic, as if inspired by the wind and the sand. The words he wrote seemed to carry a new depth, a resonance that touched those who read them in a way they couldn't quite explain. He started to incorporate the feeling of the desert, its ancient pulse, into his work. Elias never saw the old woman again, but the mysterious wooden box remained with him, a silent reminder of the night he spent under the stars, listening to the desert's song. He knew that the story it held was not just for him, but a gift to be cherished and, perhaps in time, shared in new ways through his own transformed art. His life was no longer just about preserving old words. It was about listening to the untold stories all around him, in the rustle of leaves, in the patterns of stone, in the silence of the desert. His perspective on his craft and on life itself had found a new, more profound script.